things later.
Yeah.
One more. 72.
72. Thank you. There you go.
Great.
Clicker.
Thanks. My name's Scott Campbell. I teach with Rob in urban planning program on the North Campus. We get a lot of C students come visit us. I teach economic development, so a lot of what I'm talking about is kind of the collision of economic development and sustainability. I also teach planning theory and history. Our task, I guess Josh and I, are more synthetic and more reflective. So rather than talk about my own research, I'll talk more kind of the ideas. If the question is urban sustainability, where next? One answer is, well, if the majority of the world's population now lives in cities and this percent is increasingly growing, then the sustainability question is now primarily and increasingly an urban question. And so we need to better understand how cities work, where they come from, and where the momentum of urbanism is taking us. And in particular, for me, the momentum of cities, particularly in places like the US, are the momentum of urban economics. By the way, I'm fascinated by kind of nature-urban odd interfaces. I guess in a previous life I should have been a landscape architect. This is in Frankfurt by the museums. Fascinating place. How that grass grows, I don't know. But let's take a step back and ask a basic question. What happens when we tack the urban onto sustainability? And of course, it takes you to the Taubman School, of course. But I think, you know, for me, if cities in many ways are networks, and Nancy's talk and many other talks are that, we think very much about the collision of two networks and their logics and their momentums and their priorities, the urban economic networks and the natural networks. And particularly, we all know that as urban networks continue to expand and intrude into the natural networks and fragment these networks, how do we adapt to that? Overall, urbanists, we have a kind of bias towards the compact city. I'm not sure if we should question that or push full steam ahead. And I think it raises two questions for us. If in fact the compact city is the way to go, then how do we, through architecture, land use, design, regulation, pricing policies, push this and particularly overcome an American resistance to the compact city? And also, how much density is enough and how much is too much? When is too much density too much of a good thing? I think when you go to certain cities in India, the notion about new urbanism and compact cities seem a little redundant. As an urban theorist, I often think about three key questions, which is what is wrong, how did we get here, and what is the alternative? So sustainability, I think, as a kind of theory and a concept, is a useful one to the extent that it helps us answer these three questions. I think sustainability is best as a critique of today's industrial consumer society. I think as far as the future, it provides a general but not always specific enough guidelines about how to get to the future. I think it often is the worst historically. I think we have a lot of misunderstandings about the history of urban industrial society, which leads to misunderstandings about possible solutions. Two more slides. Here's my hometown up top. And I think planners, we deal with the paradox of increasingly booming cities and struggling cities. And planning is about reconciling these two, but I think they have two different pathways to it. Growing cities face loss of green space, expensive housing, congested roads, yes, lots of resources, but they struggle to keep up with the demands of growing population. I just read today in Seattle Times that Seattle, despite their best efforts to reduce the carbon footprint, it is up 7% since 2012. And SeaTac, the airport, affluence leads to airplane flights. SeaTac is up 37% since 2012. Shrinking cities, on the other hand, they have fewer people, but they have brownfields, abandoned factories, weak infrastructure, and few resources to promote it. And finally, I think, there we go, thank you. Finally, I think we are torn between two images. Upbeat images of city-nature harmony with smart city technologies, but on the bottom, cities as concentrated poverty, pollution, and so on. So I think the challenge for us as urbanists, we represent both the source of the problem, we are the birthplace of fossil fuel industrialization, polluting chemical industries, excessive conspicuous consumption, but we also hope we're a place of the solution, of innovation, and so on. And that, I would say, the challenge for the urbanists is to live within this contradiction, to know that we are both responsible, hopefully also part of the solution. And I think we're always trying to push this balance in the right direction, to tilt the balance of power towards cities as positive forces and to minimize their destructive roles. And that, if urban planning has an aspiration, is what we're about. Thank you.